Hello, everyone. I am Vijayata Raghuram, the Program Manager Education at India Bioscience. And I welcome all of you on behalf of the India Bioscience team. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, India Bioscience is an organization that works to strengthen the life science ecosystem in India by engaging with scientists, educators, researchers, students, policymakers, as well as science enthusiasts. Today's meeting is part of our education vertical, which caters to educators from across the country who teach biology at the undergraduate and higher levels. The goal of this vertical is to provide a platform where educators can connect with each other and other members of the life science community to discuss a wide variety of topics around biology education. One topic that seems to be on most educators' minds today, maybe some more than others, is the use of artificial intelligence like ChatGPT in education. Some of you may have even explored this tool for educational or other purposes. I have myself been in intense discussions with some of my colleagues about using it in schools or colleges, what that might mean in the short term, in the long term, and so on. India Bioscience has even published a couple of articles on this topic, and you may find the link to these in the chat box. So we felt that a webinar on this topic would be useful to give us all a better clarity on the potential and the limitations of using AI in education. And AI is here to stay. So it would be useful to understand how we could use it to enhance the teaching and learning of biology in our classrooms and do it creatively in ways that we don't lose our human ingenuity to a robot. The speaker that we have invited whom we have invited today is Ishita Das. Ishita has a PhD in behavioral neuroscience from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and a master's in biophysics from the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. She works for a non-profit educational organization called Spiders and the Sea, Bengaluru, to build games to engage children and adults with their natural surroundings. She consults for a filmmaking group on a science fiction fantasy series and uses AI tools for the same. She is involved in developing a course for science or biology majors to teach the impact of science and technology using science fiction stories, which will involve using AI in ways that do not hamper creativity and learning in students. Ishita, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Before I hand over the platform to you, Ishita, let's have a quick poll to know a little bit about our audience. Right? So I'm going to start the poll now. All right. So a few very basic questions to identify who our audience is and how many of them have used AI. I'll let this go on for a few more seconds and then share the results with you. All right, I'll end the polls. And here are the results. So most of you are educators, and then we also have many researchers, students, undergraduates, masters, as well as PhD students. And most of us, 66%, have used AI for some or the other tool. That's good to know. And I'm hoping that all of you will benefit from this discussion. Just so you know, this is going to be an interactive session. And so I hope that all of you will make the most of it. And after the talk, we will have a Q&A session to have lots of interactions within us. All right. On that note, it's over to you, Ishita. Thank you. Oh, Ishita, can you please unmute yourself? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, and thank you, Vijeta, for such a kind introduction. Uh, I Hi everyone. I am Ishita, and hopefully today I will talk about. Can everyone see my screen and hear me? Just is there? Am I audible? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today I'm going to talk about my take on how artificial intelligence can be navigated in creative learning and teaching of biology. Uh, the talk is basically going to have an introduction soon, and we'll have a couple of polls for me to understand where all of you are coming from, and what pre-knowledge you have of using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, etc. I will go into brief explanations of the origins of the artificial intelligence models that are being used largely more widely now than ever before, but have been in use for a very long time for researchers and in scientific pursuits before. I will also go into a brief description of large language models, which is the basis of most of the generative artificial intelligence that we are hearing about these days. I will look at a futuristic and, of course, a present high-tech approach where teaching and learning and educational boards and educational institutes are using AI in software, which is or tutorials based on GPT, but not exactly GPT. Then we'll have another poll. And I'll finish with how specifically AI is being used in research in biology. And concluding thoughts leading to an open discussion. What is artificial intelligence? And it's one of those things which is in itself has been changing meanings over the years. But it is basically today it is the simulation of human intelligence in machines, so that machines can learn to think and process information in the same way we think, or researchers who are developing this thing, the human brain works. In education, artificial intelligence has this huge potential of making it more personalized to students and an aid for tasks that the teachers are supposed to carry out, like even designing courses, course material, curriculum, etc. The potential is so huge that it can take over. Some people have this fear that it will take over teaching from humans, but I am not one of those people who think it's ever going to take over human teachers in any form. But I do believe that it will enhance the use of artificial intelligence is going to enhance teaching, not just in biology, but everywhere, but in ways that we are already seeing examples of right now. So you can see this image of Duolingo, which is one of the personal tutors for teaching language. And language is where artificial intelligence and learning models have been doing really well in translations or and teaching people how to even navigate new places they've never been to in an absolutely new environment where nobody understands what you're saying. And Duolingo, you can also learn a new language in far easier than it used to ever be before. And that is all because of artificial intelligence and different ways of understanding human language and using it to translate or change the input to a different type of an output, which is useful for people. With this, I like to go into the first poll so that I understand how well the audience today has used the ChatGPT or whatever your favorite tool of AI is till now, as they're attending the talk. I'm assuming everybody has some interest in artificial intelligence. So here's the poll. There's a different poll for teachers. There's a different poll for students. So if you can answer accordingly, unless of course you're a teacher and a student, in which case you can answer.
We'll wait for a few more seconds and end the poll. So I hope everybody is busy polling. Okay. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And here are the results.
Okay. So a lot of you have used personalized learning paths or interactive lessons using AI tutors, which is great. And Canvas and Blackboard are increasingly being used in universities. And yes, I think one of the best ways of using AI is designing lessons or course material, and also help in assignments and assessments. That's great to know. Thank you for letting me know a little bit about yourself and the background for your interest in artificial intelligence. Let me see if I can, provide you with more information or, an understanding of how the field is changing or has been in the past and changing continuously. So
can I stop sharing now?
Yes, yes. Thank you. So artificial intelligence as such originated in the 1950s, the phrase and the concept of using machines so that it can perform some of the tasks easily that humans do regularly and in a routine basis. So it started with machine learning, which is a simpler version of artificial intelligence. And then the term itself was coined by somebody in the late 1950s called John McCarthy, who's the pioneer of the field in artificial intelligence. Right after machine learning, there came there was years and decades of improvement in algorithms and the models that are were being used. So there was Deep Blue, who beat Gary Kasparov in playing chess, and the possibilities had already been envisioned by many people, and then the possibilities were truly expanded using something called deep learning, where the idea was eventually machines can start doing really complex tasks without even the need for human intervention. That is technically called unsupervised learning. And in science or in most of biology or any research that if you've used tools of neural networks, supervised learning is something where we have done a lot of classifications or discriminations, or how you put together different types of data in one place, or clustering algorithms. All of that is slightly simplistic machine learning. And in deep learning, the idea is that eventually the machine will just be given unlabeled data, and it can still predict where it falls depending on the patterns seen in that data. That is deep learning. Now, that uses neural networks. The next step was initially you could only tell machines in a specific way to do specific things. Now, what people really want, and the actual use case for machine learning for the large population, is for machines to start understanding human language in either text form or speech recognition, which also came about like late 1990s. And that was one of the most insignificant steps in making artificial intelligence a thing of everyday talks, something that everybody talks about all the time because of its utility in human life. So natural language processing and generative AI are basically really intertwined. And that is why the reductive use of the term generative AI is just only looking at one part of the whole thing. Whereas we should always, whenever we are thinking of any generative AI tool, we are automatically assuming that it possesses natural language processing, which is NLP, which is a separate set of models, which are always put in layers next to the generative AI, which is generating the context that you want. So initially, even natural language processing, even today, used neural networks, which were called feed forward, and they are convolutional neural networks and recurrent neural networks. We will not be going into much detail about that today. It's beyond the scope of this talk. But the big breakthrough that came in 2017 were transformer models, which are now used to produce GPT and BERT, which is Google's Bard's model, and text to video, which is recently took over, like went viral recently, and everybody was talking about how you can just talk and a movie will be made based on what you want. But it has still been in existence for a very long time in our personal lives with personal assistants like Siri or Alexa, whoever uses them commonly. Generative AI also has different models called which is not exactly transformer models. They are called generative adversarial networks, and that or diffusion models. Both of them are again generally called these days as generative AI because they are generating new content. I won't go into a lot of detail in this talk during the course of the talk on GANs, because they are basically converting text into videos or changing image styles from one thing to the other. Now, their function in education is very overlapping to something like ChatGPT or anything derived from ChatGPT. And in use cases, currently they are being used a lot in medical science and research for identifying tumors because they can go process a large amount of imaging. But in actual education and teaching, like undergrads, as most of you are teachers and students who are studying biology, not medicine, I'm assuming, that functionality is not of that much interest in today's talk. But we will have a short discussion on that at the time of Q&A, if people want. Now, that was a brief history of how generative AI has come into existence and is now taking over everybody's thoughts and actions. And like I mentioned, that it's the transformer models which actually made it possible for everybody to start accessing ChatGPT in a way that it can work on any computer now. I also mentioned that machine learning used to have simpler neural networks, which were the CNNs and the recurrent neural networks. And the generating new content in response of user prompts is what generative AI is doing right now. Previously, the neural networks would be something that would detect an object from like a mass of objects or like a picture and detect what it is. That was the feed-forward networks. And now, using transformer models, generative AI can actually produce text after a very long prompt, which seems very similar to human writing. So I should mention here that it's even transformer models don't exist in in separate isolation. They always have layers of CNNs and RNNs in combination. So I mean, whenever you're thinking generative AI, it's not one thing. It's not one model. It's never one architecture. It's always an extremely complex architecture of several layers of different things giving you an output that is very similar to humans. So the one since you have attended this talk now, every time people mention generative AI, you should have a clear picture of being able to distinguish which type of AI is being used. Is it also using natural language processing? Usually, yes. But is it just something like convolutional neural networks and not actually generative AI? If it's just recognizing an object, then yes. It's the simpler feed-forward neural network and not transformer model and not exactly what we think of what generative AI is. Okay. So this is very technical, and I'm just going to gloss over it just so that you have an idea of what makes the transformer model special. What makes transformer model special is the self-attention they are allowed to have, which is basically they don't need a sequence of data to be in sequence for them to process it. They can take a long sequence and then they just break it up and put it inside their different layers of neural network, and then come up with an output. And it's possible for transformer models to have parallel processing, which was not previously possible in the feed-forward networks of CNN and even RNN, recurrent neural networks. This self-attention allows for much more self-supervised learning models. Now, before this, machine learning was posited or purported to be something that doesn't require human intervention. However, that is not the actual case. For almost every type of complex algorithm that was designed for marketing or for any type of chatbot, a large amount of human intervention is at least required for the training phases. Whereas transformer models make it possible that the intervention that humans provide is reduced over time, but it's not completely gone, and it never will be. But it is possible that it will be reduced over a period of time as more and more models are trained. Okay. So I'm sorry I'm using a lot of words, but we are going to be talking about like large language models. And that language is a very important component of this whole artificial intelligence thing, because without human language or human text and making it accessible to such a large amount of people, this meeting won't be happening, because it'll be something still that scientists use or researchers use, or somebody with high tech needing an API or some kind of a developer is using. And to me, using these diagrams of circles and lines or any of these flowcharts is not is equally deceptive, in the sense that it makes you feel that you are understanding something more. But I personally think that words are a lot better in actually making you understand what is going on, because a lot of these neural networks, deep learning and artificial intelligence programs and algorithms, teaching that is like teaching statistics. And if anyone has taken a statistics class or taught a statistics class, it is like the diagrammatic representation of statistics is pretty pointless. So unless you're actually doing it, there is no diagram for it. The only reason to use statistics for the general purpose, not for statisticians, is its use case. How is the statistical program or algorithm or whatever how is it going to be used? So I'm not going to explain these things, because it's same as saying I'm not going to try to explain how the human brain works, because it's not only is it not known how neural networks work, we definitely don't know how the human brain works. But given the fact that I have some very talented artist friends, and I can give you a sort of pictorial or graphic representation of what transformer models can do or be used for, which is the same as saying, how is statistics useful? So transformer models can take long sequential data. And like I said before, they don't need it to be in a particular sequence. They don't need the input to be slow or as in going on in one direction. They can take data and parallel process it in several ways. And the most interesting long sequential data for most biologists is the DNA and protein structure. I used to do protein folding studies a long time ago in my master's. And the one thing that transformer models is definitely changing and will definitely take over a lot of, let's say, chore work for students, is predicting protein structure, is predicting drug discovery. And a lot of new algorithms are going to come up. Many new startups, etc., are probably dealing with how transformer models can be used to predict the structures of the hundreds of thousands of proteins that of human proteins, of bacterial proteins, of any viral proteins that that are that are likely to be still a mystery, or to everybody, for disease concerns or just for information. Now coming to the use of transformer models in large language models, which is the basis of, like I mentioned before, ChatGPT and BERT and other easy to use artificial intelligence tools that make it that give you a content which is new, readable, and it's almost inseparable from human writing. So LLMs in this, like in this book and graphic, Apu Pen and Lauren today, say is like the steam engine or the electric motor in the AI world. They are going to bring huge revolutionary change in the way things are used by people and understood by people in marketing, in business, and of course, eventually in all kinds of scientific pursuits and education. So I'll just go briefly over what LLMs are, and then I'll take any questions that people have had for so far. I just wanted to finish this section so that, if there are any questions that my slides are answering, you don't have to ask them. But I'll just take a pause here, and you can feel free to ask a question after this slide. So LLMs are generating content, which is basically human-like text using human-like language. So we can give any kind of a prompt that we want to design, and we don't have to follow any guidelines. We can give them any long sentence prompts, and then they generate they generate new contextual replies to our prompts. Now, these prompts are generated after these LLMs have been trained with billions and billions of parameters using like the most powerful GPUs available to mankind, owned by the most richest, Meta, Google companies, not that accessible even to researchers till now, which is why GPT, OpenAI, BERT, etc. have been introduced by the biggest companies of the world. But these parameters are determined and changed to allow the right type of response or what the users will like. So this is generating responses for humans and for the general public. GPTs are basically using an algorithm that only reads the prompts or the input in the left to right direction. And its idea is to complete the prompt in the most statistically logical way that it can come up with. Now, statistics and logics here is determined by the parameters that have been incorporated in the model, which is why these need to be trained over and over and, over large number of data sets. BERT, which has bidirectional encoder representation in its name, uses bidirectional a model that learns bidirectionally, left to right and then right to left again. BERT is the basis of BARD, which is the Google equivalent, or sort of equivalent of ChatGPT. And this is why designing the right prompts, especially for GPTs and even for BERT, is extremely crucial for getting a good response. And depending on what you want, again, the main operator here is you. So what do you want as the answer? And it has to satisfy whatever requirements you have for the generating the appropriate answer. So this is just like, so large language models, and you, of course, I forgot to mention, they scrape like the entire internet, all the books ever written by humans, all the notes ever written that are on all the poems, everything is scraped from the internet and used to train these large language programs. But eventually the idea is that they have to be able to learn using minimum data or only a subset of data and still become really, really good and fluent at answering human prompts. So at this point, does anybody have any questions? I can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, so I don't. So yeah, there is somebody who has raised their hands. Gayatri, did you have a question? Please go ahead and ask.
Yeah, thanks. Ishita, you have mentioned about the importance of engineering the right prompts, right? So,
Yes, yes.
are there specific templates that we need to follow, or can you give us some direction there?
Yes, of course. So that is going to be something I want to discuss in the Q&A session. So there's a whole, I have a slide for that, and I want to have a whole discussion on that during the Q&A session. So if you just wait for that towards the end, because I thought, the prompts are something that there are courses for prompt engineering, but I believe more or less, if you have been successful with Google searches in the past, prompt engineering is not such a difficult barrier to cross.
Okay, great.
But we will discuss some based on some courses that I've seen on Coursera or wherever about prompt engineering. I have some input on how you can design your prompts for it to be better able to answer your exact queries.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Ishita.
There's a question in the chat box from Jyoti Rao. She's asking if these tools have been trained using the content in English only or other languages?
Yes, currently the use of regional languages is limited in training GPT and BERT, but they are getting translational because, in fact, different algorithms, but also artificial intelligence has been used for translation widely before. They will be trained and may have components of how to do translations in a way that can answer queries in any language of your choice. But as such, since most information on the internet, so it has to be something directly related to how much information is there in the internet. And since most of the information is in English, and the training data set is likely for most of them to be in English, you will need specific GPTs based on which are similar to ChatGPT but not ChatGPT, that will specifically answer your questions in different languages. It's one of those, and for other, especially any Indian language, it's extremely difficult, and it's way far in the future for GPTs to be trained to understand. But I'm talking more about like French and Spanish, and, something that has at least the same words, as in at least the same letters, alphabet. And not, so, but they're still in very early phases. It's not anything that is widely available for users to use, except the direct translations of, that you can use in Google. But you can't really ask them to create new content to write a book in French yet, which you can still do for GPT.
Okay. And I think there are two very similar questions from Ritu Roy and Anbarsan. I'll just read out to you. Does ChatGPT also use the prompts and responses we provide to train as well? And whether these chat responses are used to improve the models in ad hoc manner, or are the responses used at later point of time at regular intervals?
Yes. So GPT is generative pre-trained transformer. So it is not using any, unlike the human brain, which is just one of the differences. It is not using anything in real time to change its answers. But if you tell that you're unhappy with the answer, it'll try to give you another answer, but based on its old pre-trained model only. It's not going to incorporate anything new. At least GPT-3 and 4 are not incorporating anything new. So in fact, a lot of the times you might have noticed that GPT says this, as per my information from 2022. This is the response. This is what I know. I will briefly talk about things that are more real time, but they're not as powerful and as well, equipped to understand real time data as GPT-4 is powerful to use the data that it already knows. So does that answer both the questions?
Actually, I think Ritu Roy's question was specific to ChatGPT, whereas Anbarsan, and this is my mistake, that he was asking about NLP models, not specifically ChatGPT, but will your answer be the same?
So NLP models used like in Siri or Alexa or any of the assistants also use pre-trained data. They're not using, as far as to my knowledge. Now they could be in specific, for example, in specific scenarios, like if there is a company that requires Siri to do something in real time, they would have paid for a developer to use the content that Siri has used to make it more. So it's in specific scenarios, I believe it's possible that AI assistants are using real-time data. And AI assistants, like in the sense that work with people directly, Siri, Alexa, they might be using real-time data but I really don't think they are learning in real time yet for the general public. But I'm sure that simpler answers, which are not like, complex prompts or anything, are modified, but I don't think there is any real-time learning, even in any other NLP type of, even your GPS type of response. I don't think there is any real-time learning in that. However, they will take your data and use it in a model that will be released later. So that's one of the privacy issues.
Okay. And I think we'll just take one last question before you go ahead. Shalini asks, is it possible to give an example of what it means to be generative and generate new contexts and not recognition alone?
Okay. I will try to answer some of that in the next few slides, but we can come back to this question later on. If you can just remember to do that. Yeah.
Okay. So I think let's move ahead then, Ishita. Yeah.
Okay. So here's another graphic representation of GPT, what GPT does. I mentioned it goes from left to right only, unlike BERT, which is a different type of a model. So and I also mentioned that showing the models or algorithms or architecture is like showing statistical diagrams. But here I really like this depiction of the trained model because, that's gym training. The model is trained and over a long period of time, taking a lot of effort for it to be able to handle difficult and strong tasks. But basically what GPT-3 does is, it is trying to complete the prompt that you've given in a sentence. So if your prompt is once upon a, it's going to do a lot of calculations using the 200 billion parameters that it has and come up with the most likely completion to once upon a thing, and then it'll be time. So which is why, again, prompt design, like some of you asked, is a very important concern or something to learn for GPTs. But which is also why the question of is it creating new content, to me, is not that clear, because it is rewording new content. And if it wasn't doing that, it will be plagiarism, because you can't reprint anybody else's word. So it is, but it is using a much more vast amount of information that one person or even a classroom full of person will have. But this concept of new content, which is almost like text, is similar to rephrasing. And again, it depends on people's definition of what content is. And some people think rephrasing is new content because that's how we answer all our exams and do all our assignments. And I would agree to that. But the weight we give to artificial intelligence for doing this so beautifully is, we should keep in mind that this content is basically rephrasing using statistics and a lot of information that humans created to begin with. So what happens, we'll go to prompt engineering in the discussions, but what happens after you've given a prompt? So each prompt is broken like transformer models. Again, the good thing about transformer models is you don't need it to follow a particular sequence. The model takes the prompt, breaks it into smaller units, and then tries to use, these units are called tokens, because apparently units is not enough. And they use statistical patterns based on to predict the word or phrases that will be coherent. They don't have to be right, they don't have to be the best, but they just have to be coherent to what the next thing can be in this jumble of words or jumble of tokens that they've been given. Now, these patterns, again, are identified using the parameters of co-occurrence, which is all, anybody who's done any statistics at all recognizes the co-occurrence or the probability of how, what the next word or the next phrase should be. And it's the pattern identification which requires parameters, because as you can imagine, there is Shakespeare, and then there is Stephen King, and then there is any research article that you ever wrote. All of that is in the database of the training model. So it has to understand where this sentence belongs to. Does it belong to a horror story, or does it belong to a scientific article? And that is the pattern that it's trying to recognize, and it is using statistics to do that. It's not like it can actually read. It's not reading anything. It's just recognizing a pattern. It's almost like when people study for GRE and they don't really know the words. And I knew a lot of people who did extremely well in the verbal thing without actually knowing the words, because they recognize patterns. GPTs do that extremely well. That is their main forte, pattern recognition. So after the jumble of words or tokens, this is very simplistic. Anybody who's actually a researcher or a scientist who's working on these models is going to be extremely offended in my oversimplification. But I mean, these are words, and I would like to think that I'm explaining this to humans only. So the output of the predicted words is then converted into a sentence that you can recognize, and then it'll just keep iteratively doing the same thing until it's reached its token limits, or your GPU is done, and then it'll format the sentence and make the right punctuations as much as possible, and then give you the response. Now, if you're not happy with it, you do a different prompt or tell it to redo the whole thing using some other directions. But basically, this is what it does. Using statistics to recognize patterns, and transformer models, which is the basis of GPT, do it extremely well with extremely long sequences of data as well. Today's talk is on how GPTs and other transformer models is going to affect education. So while we already touched into this using like Duolingo, etc. And this is sort of a developing field, the educational GPT models, because again, one of the main concerns for me for GPTs is, while GPT-3 is now accessible to the public, we don't know how long it will be, and GPT-4 is already paid. Now, these Edge GPTs are being developed using the GPT model. OpenAI provides it for use by all developers anywhere with a particular API, and they are charging them now. So any developer working for an educational company can develop like student-tailored, personalized tutorials, so that there is something called adaptive learning. So the concept now here is that teachers are not sometimes able to real-time adapt to a class of students, especially if the ratio of teacher to student is something that is extremely skewed, with like one teacher to 100 students, or one teacher to whatever is in a lot of cases in India, and even any kind of a medical school you go to abroad. So often the learning platforms, or the adaptive teaching platforms basically provide tutorials or tutors that are teaching students in addition to being taught by humans. Other than that, there are interactive simulations that teachers can use in class. Again, then for all of these things are something by subscription, or your school has to enroll in it, or it's not something that is accessible to almost any government school in India, or even a lot of the public schools. But yes, a lot of private schools will probably have access to this. If not now, if not already, they probably will have very soon later on. But the interactive simulations and real-time feedback, in my opinion, are going to be very important in the teaching of biology, because a lot of biology is extremely complex in terms of just where physically it is, anatomy, physiology. brain networks, even like simple something simple as blood circulation. To actually imagine all of that, it is very handy to have a tutor who can give you a video, and you can choose to choose where you want to go next, which level of cells you want to see in the digestive system, where the pancreas are, which cells are releasing insulin. All of that, if you can see in a way that is immersive, such interactive simulations are going to be very useful to learn for biology students, but not yet, as far as I know, within the reach of the general public, especially in India or in many other places, even abroad. What these companies like Dreambox and Smart Sparrow are selling is this real-time feedback also, that you know immediately whether you understood something or not. Real-time feedback has some uses, but I mean, it's a feature, and it depends on where it's being used and how real time do you need feedback to be, and whether or whether you should let students to think about something and then come back and give their own feedback later or whatever. The last thing that I think is also very interesting is gamification or adding quizzes, which can like adding quizzes or a quest during class. This is going, I mean, I'm not sure of how well adapted students of who are currently students will become to such a change suddenly, but eventually just teaching in class and having quizzes in between that are designed by students for each other, or designed immediately by the teacher for the students, is going to be something that can aid and make the basically break the boredom of constantly talking at your class. So here the diagram that I'm showing is a very interesting demo. This is just a demo by LabNet, I think. And here you can see that if you go into, like, if you buy this demo, the gloved hand is the student, and the whole idea is that how the whole idea is basically a virtual lab setup, and the student will be guided as to exactly what to do. Put the tip on the pipette, change tips between samples, add the buffer before you put the cover slip on, use all kinds, use the right antibody, what is it supposed to show. So virtual labs in one of the forms of interactive simulation, which I think is going to be very useful, especially since labs are not something that are accessible to everybody, and they don't need to be. These are very simple procedures which any student can learn without actually having to go into the lab to start off. Of course, eventually there's nothing like real hands-on training, but to have it, also it's beneficial for the labs so that students can not make too many errors and spoil samples. I used to be terrified of doing that when I was a student. So it's the virtual labs, for especially for biology, are going to be very useful for teaching and for students. But they are not something, Labster or anything is still not something that is available to the general public yet. It will be soon, and there will soon be many Indian companies that will come up with things like this. So there is a UNESCO use of AI in education whole protocol that came out last year in July sometime, and they have tried to explain what adaptive learning is and how to go about it, and that depends on the educator and of course the schools or the institutions they are working with. And there is two types of adaptivity. Of course, this is very intuitive. I don't think this is but anyway, just so that everybody understands what adaptive learning means, it's there is two types. There is designed adaptivity, in which the educator or the teacher has the capacity to tell the say the AI assistant or the tutorial function or whatever it is, if the student gives this type of an answer, or if the student is taking too long to give this answer, or if the student, then you go into the lesson in another, repeat the lesson, or repeat different parts of the lesson so that they can improve the performance of the student by improvement in learning. But this is not something that is that the program is deciding. It has to be something that is trained into the program by educators. This gives much more agency to the educators, and because they know their class best, or they know who they're teaching over time, and it will allow a type of personalized tutoring under the benefit, or under the guardianship of an educator. The other thing, which is going to be more popular because it's easier to do, is algorithmic adaptivity. And then those algorithms will use some kind of pre-trained data from different students, which I'm sure people are collecting already from students all over the world, as how much does the learner know, and what can we teach, and what they should be doing based on what answer they're giving. So that is algorithmic adaptivity. Again, there is like a whole series of algorithms that you can go for that. But this is these types of uh, say tutorials, or addition or assistantship is something that is going to be soon incorporated in at least some institutions who can afford it in ways for educating students. Right now, I just want to mention the best tutorials are for the English language and math, because understanding the performance in English language and comprehension and doing math is a very simple concept, or in compared to understanding understanding the performance in biology, or understanding the performance in chemistry, physics, any of that any of those more complex things, political science even, or history. Although history, I suppose the performance can be. So all these types of personalized tutorials, AI assisted tutorials, or tutors are going to be very subject specific. They are not going to be something that can cater to all students from all backgrounds doing anything they want. So that's something just to keep in mind, because it's while this is progressing at a very fast rate, the width of the scope of this whole thing is going to be limited to subjects that are more amenable to being assessed, or changed, trained into a program. So basically, with all this, the main thing I want to bring to forth here right now is AI is a very important tool. It is here to say, like Vijeta said right in the beginning, and it can assist in many areas, but it is never going to be a replacement to human teachers, because the mentorship and the emotional support that are crucial for a holistic education at every age in life, not just for little children, is not something AIs can ever uh, take over and do. So study, there have been many studies going on for education purposes, have predicted that there will be a blended approach where AI is used to aid human teachers in different types of classrooms, and then that is the way forward. But again, AI is never going to replace human teachers. So bringing to that, replacing human teachers, I want to go into another poll to understand what type of concerns do people have, especially the educators, but also the students. What is there right now, the burning concerns in their mind about the use of AI, now that it is here to stay, and everybody has dealt with it in some way. So Vijeta, can you run the next poll?
Yeah, it's up. I'll wait for a few more seconds and then turn this off. I'm ending it. And here are the results.
Can we keep the results up for a minute? And
Sure.
yeah, so I see that a lot of concern is because of unemployment and loss of gigs. Since this, I hope I have been able to press on the issue that the unemployment, at least for educators, for anybody who's actually interested in educating students, is very unlikely, in my opinion. For students wanting to be creative personnel or wanting to go into marketing or wanting to be designers in some sort, or who are intending to be artists, that is going to be an issue in the very near future, if it is not already. And I'm sure it is already, especially in marketing and branding and all of that, because a lot of the models, the generative adversarial models, which we didn't talk about much because it's not pertinent to biology as such, that is going to be for the creatives, for musicians, this AI is going to be a grave danger to their jobs at present. Of course, there are lawsuits going against it being able to use everything for free, like it is doing right now, etc. But for students who want to do science, and for educators who are teaching science and anything that is even remotely complex or requires, like, perception, observation, and reasoning at different levels, I don't, while it's a hype right now that everybody's going to lose their jobs, eventually, considering how few teachers there are already, compared to how many students we have, I don't foresee a loss of employment for educators at all. Now, yeah, anybody who's also a part-time creator in some way or a designer in some way will have to adapt very quickly and learn different ways to use AI tools, and then maybe, get different types of side gigs, not as they used to get now. Now, coming to the most major concern for all teachers that I've ever talked to is cheating in assignments and even in exams, because open book exams are actually a good idea usually. And as soon as you have an open book exam, you have open book ChatGPT. Uh, so that this is where educators and institutes have to adapt, because this, I don't believe I don't believe that you tell students especially, or you even tell me that you can't do this, ever actually works. I don't think it works. You can't ban people from using something that is already there, especially if it's free. Even if it is not free, especially don't read this book, don't do this, don't, that doesn't work. It might have like a temporary effect, but it's not going to be something long. So what we have to do is adapt to this and teach the kids to use ChatGPT as a tool. It can't be used to answer their entire assignment. It cannot be something they just print out or spit out and give as the answer. But they have to learn to use it in a way that makes their answer better. Now, the one thing which sometimes in the heat of in the complexity of studies in India and everywhere, and the immense pressure that students are in, they forget, and I also used to forget a lot of times before, is we are here to actually learn something. Now, if we don't learn something, we are paying, and most people pay for education. Although I don't know whether, especially higher education, we are paying to learn something. Now, if we are paying and then not learning anything, then there's no point in, even coming to class at all. So, but there has to be this joy in learning. And I believe if our assignments and our exams are somehow killing that joy of learning, if the pressure is just to survive, then we can't expect students to not cheat. Now, if you, again, this is a very privileged view. I agree that it's a privileged view, but for the most part, the idealistic view is also this. children and students should want to learn and should actually be invested in their own learning. And if we are not doing that right now in some ways, we have to change. And I think GPT is going to make us make that change, which was not coming any other way. So I think in a way, this is this is like a backsided compliment in my mind. The third concern is of what I've mentioned this in passing previously. The existing inequity, especially in India, and you go to rural areas or even small town schools, their access to AI or understanding of AI or understanding of prompts, mainly because now it is still all English based, and even their teachers probably don't know how to use it and how to. That is going. Whereas in urban schools, in any international school you go, in any extremely well-funded school you go, they are probably using AI tools in various manners already. So it is going to enhance and exacerbate the current inequity from a government municipal school to, say, a private school, going or whatever is the, I don't know the go-to school anymore, but that is going. And I think as educators, we should be very aware of this. And the idea should be, if you have a class of mixed students, you have to be aware, and you're starting to use AI, and your students are using AI. You have to somehow make this field a little bit more fair for everybody, and either provide them access to AI or make group projects so that there's a mixed group and everybody can more or less access something. Again, I already mentioned hindered learning. They have to they have to be invested in their own learning. And it's our job to make that possible. Privacy is not something teachers can directly do anything about right now. But institutions and everything, people are really concerned about privacy, and it's the lawmakers, policymakers, and institutes have to make firewalls and other things work so that the personal details of any student is not released for use by AI, by companies designing the next model, or is used in basically any way that students are not aware of, or also don't understand the implication of. So they might be aware of, but they don't understand the implication. So that's again something that we have to instill into them, that your data and you is valuable. You're not going to go around giving it for free for people who are already billionaires in their own world. So but like I said, these privacy concerns have to be dealt with law and policymakers. It's not something we can directly do anything about at present. And I've mentioned this before, it's Google. All these GPT trainings require immense computational power, and that requires immense energy and immense money. And even no research institute here in Caltech, MIT can compare to OpenAI, Meta, Google, and even Amazon. So we are giving a lot of human cumulative knowledge for free to be used as they want, because again, we have no control over the parameters they choose in their models. To people whose basic thing in life is to use the data of the rest of the world for their gains. So this is an extremely important concern. And the book that I've been referring to so far deals with how human society has to learn to deal with it. And I will discuss a little bit more about this later on. All right. So is there anybody who had written anything about this? Their different concerns?
Yes, actually there were a bunch, and they're there on the chat. But I think, like Beatrice says, maybe distance learning will be taken over due to tutorials. Students might, will reduce their own critical thinking and analysis and intelligence. So, and also Deva Prasad Datta said, non-evidence-based content might, show up. Yeah. But I also wanted to just let you know that it's 4:35.
Okay.
So maybe we'll have to.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
So I'll see if we can do like a there is not much slides left. I just want to mention one thing. Like one of the questions I've already mentioned, the ChatGPT answers are not reliable. They can be hallucinations, and we educators have to be very worried about that. And of course, it's one way to stop cheating. Uh, one thing ChatGPT is extremely bad is in counting, and you can tell it to count till 100 and give it 100 lines and come up with 28, and it's bizarre, but it's true. And the inner workings of the model are totally inexplicable, and they perpetuate the biases that people are controlling. So people as in OpenAI, Google, and they control the parameters, so and can perpetuate the bias. So this is something we have to be fairly concerned about. Like the human brain, they're trying to simulate. What these models are actually doing is not known to anybody. So the ways forward, and we have touched on this, so I can go quickly over this, is to have engaging assignments that require critical thinking, that require creativity, and allowing students to use AI as a tool for brainstorming instead of telling them not to use AI. And then the best way to do that is, you tell them to design an experiment and then present it in class. Do a group project and then present it in class. Do a scientific discovery, read an article and then make an art project out. So something that can't easily be done by ChatGPT in the one go. So they can use it to maybe plan out the design, plan out the project, but they can't actually ChatGPT is not going to do their presentation for them. So they have to know what they're talking about during a presentation or a seminar. ChatGPT and all other drawing tools are really far behind in scientific illustrations. So in biology, etc., there is very little chance that they can cheat on an assignment which is asking them to draw something or do something like that. So basically, we have to adapt and have more creative assignments that reduce dependence on ChatGPT, but increase the use of them as a tool. Like I just said, and of course, since I'm into nature education, I think outside nature interactions and journaling, is really going to be very important in the future, given the climate change and everything else. I really think in biology, some classes should be held outside, and there should be nature walks incorporated in almost any type of coursework that they are doing. I'll very briefly go through this because a lot of you are students and researchers, and you probably already use things like Scopus. And I believe in academia, AI assistants are leveling the playing ground for people whose first language is not English. So they can they can understand jargon for really complex topics like neuroscience or do something like that. Whereas and PaperPal can help write in academic English. So I believe science is not limited to what we to only the English speakers, and it has really hindered the progress of scientists from any other language, especially in India or in China or anywhere else where English is not a native language for some. So I believe the AI assistants in academia like Scopus and Elicit, who are summarizing the papers extremely well using transformer models and GPT, are going to have an immensely positive impact by allowing non-native English speakers and even intersectional students to understand new fields much better. A very short answer is like no, because I believe AI is not an end to itself. The idea of AI is to make human life better and human society better, and it can be used as a tool for the next big discovery. But even if AI has better comprehension, knows the accumulation of human knowledge or whatever else its capacity is, we as human society will determine how it's going to, what an actual discovery is. A human mind is required to understand what is the most important thing that human society needs to do right now. And since that relevance is not something that comes inherently to any AI, or can it, unless some human gives that prompt. It's not going to be the next Darwin or Feynman. This will lead to the discussion. And I'm just going to say that the components of human intelligence, which is emotional depth and creativity, are a crucial element of intelligence. And while artificial intelligence is intelligent for today, it is not the definition of intelligence in itself has changed over time culturally. It used to be how much you can remember, everything that you can remember. If you can, recite the whole Shakespeare series, you were considered to be intelligent. Or if you could do, those transport phenomena problems or some type of thermodynamics equations on the board, you were intelligent. But now AI can do that very easily. I believe AI is either calculated on steroids or Einstein, and it's up to us to define what intelligence actually is, and not think that artificial intelligence is an end to itself. We are not trying to make the fastest and the most luxurious and the most beautiful car that nobody can actually use in the human population. We are trying to have public transport, so which most people can use and is actually useful for human civilization and for the planet. So we should be aware that the end goal is not a Ferrari. The end goal is buses, more buses, and something that everybody can use for their benefit, for an improvement in their life. And finally, why I think, in my intuition, I think artificial intelligence is never going to be the next great scientist is because pattern recognition is not going to tell you intuition. Every scientist and every researcher, although maybe not every student at the earliest stages of their career, understands that most big discoveries or most big observational things have come out because of intuition. And intuition is not going to be programmed into AI because we don't even know where we get it from. So it's and there are no parameters that can tell anybody what intuition is. So I believe in science, intuition and knowledge and understanding large data is as critical as actually having access to a large amount of information. So and data. So in the end, I just want to say that human teachers, because of their intelligence and creativity and common sense, are not in a competition with AI, but we will have to adapt and take on new tools that improve the learning of students and our experience as teachers as well. I'll mention that later if we have time. Let's go on to questions and discussion.
That's great. Lots to learn, lots to think about. So we had a bunch of questions even earlier. So let me take them up first, and hopefully they will answer a lot of questions that people are coming up with now.
Yeah.
So let me bring up Shalini's question once again. Is it possible to give an example of what it means to be generative and generate new contexts and not recognition alone? If you can just explain that.
Okay. So I'll give you an example of, say, if you're using image recognition software. So, or you want to use DALL-E to make a new drawing, or the difference, even for DALL-E, to make a new content, it's going to use all kinds of artwork made previously by humans to come up with something that is a mix of that is a mixture of what has gone before. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, firstly, I mean, all thoughts have circulated in human minds, in different human minds. So originality is a difficult concept, so I won't go into that. But creating new things should require an increased understanding of the world in some way. Now, artificial intelligence doesn't have that increased understanding of the world in any way. It just has a way of rephrasing or producing what is already the current understanding of the world by humans from a lot of data over different years, all kinds of intelligent humans, scientists, writers, designers. and then putting it in a way that becomes digestible to one human or two humans or a group of humans. So if you want, I don't know whether that answers the question.
Ishita,
but
I think we can.
yeah,
I think you
yeah.
have given
Yeah.
a broad picture of this. We will move on so that more questions can be covered. The next question is from Sushma Sardana. What sort of training would be required for ethical use of AI at school level?
So firstly, the ethical component of GPTs is always supervised. It has to be managed by a human or administration. So now whatever software is going to be used in a school will have to be run. Will have to be run over or checked before being deployed to a state by people, and everything that is considered offensive or etc. will have to be removed. And this is an ongoing thing, and everybody does this. Has at least one checkpoint for ethical use of or non-offensive content being generated. At least at several passes of that is done in all kinds of GPT derived software. But I think institutions and schools, especially where different languages are used, will have to do this on their own, inside their own system before they can deploy it to students. So that basically would require like back and forth between the software developer and the institution, because you won't be able to train the software yourself, because nobody's going to tell you the parameters that need to be changed for such type of a training. That will be proprietary, basically, if known at all. Can you go to the next question?
Okay. Now, Tressa Jacob asks, how much similarity with AI is accepted in writing a research article? So you did mention that, non-English, non-native speakers could use, but how much can they depend on?
So there are directives for how much AI can be used. And I think science, almost all journals have now written that in their submission guidelines. Mainly what you have to do is mention that AI assistants have been used to write this article, and they will do their own editing. And that is the minimum requirement. I think the whole article can be written if you can quite manage that. It's currently, I don't think that can be manageable. Right now, it basically would correct for grammar or make it look more professional. I don't think it can actually explain the data. So there will always be who's writing. Whoever has conducted the experiments will have to explain the data. Will also have to do the methods. It's basically the introduction or say the discussion part. The main thing that you have to do in all journals right now is you have to mention that AI assistant was used for writing this, and they don't really have any other requirements for this. And so plagiarism rules and all already exist. Yeah. Plagiarism rules, etc. already exist. So you have to check for that. And they will also check for that. That's what their editorial board is for. But that is, that's always been there.
I think a lot of questions were on similar lines. So I'm going to skip those. Beatrice asks, can the tutor, I guess the AI tutor, get the concept right as the teacher would have taught or meant?
So it depends. I would say it depends on the context, of course. I don't think they can, but if it's like understanding a deeper level of understanding than like just an answer for is this the right what is force and what is pressure, and explain the Newtonian laws versus the Einstein laws of gravity, it can probably do that. But what is the implication also it can probably do. So I mean, it entirely depends. But for a psychology type of a tutorial or a psychiatry tutorial or a behavioral tutorial, I think the limits of AI assistance will be reached. But anything that most of the time, depending on which software this is and what they were trained on, they will be at least marketed as being correct answers. So, but like nuances are going to be difficult to predict.
So rather than depend on concept teaching, stimulate the creativity and the critical thinking, ask questions that will trigger the critical thinking of students is important.
Yes.
Rather than explanation of facts and concepts.
Yes, so exactly, very good point, Vijeta. The tutors will give you facts for sure. I mean, they can't be wrong in that. Once they are being marketed as tutor, I mean, eventually they will not be wrong in that. Let's say they are probably still wrong, but eventually they are not going to be wrong in facts or theories. But how to use this theory and what is the application, what are the implications, all of that, it will require some guidance by the teacher and creative thinking and further research by the students.
All right. Dr. Jagjit Kaur asks, what kind of preventive measures do we need to take while using AI, especially during virtual interactive simulations? So, I mean, I don't know, earlier you answered about this checks and training, right? Is this the same? And if it's the same answer, then move on.
So I don't have an answer to that. For in simulations, because most of the time the simulations are going to be pre-made. I don't think you can actually check something, but the different additions to the simulation, whether what type of a lab is it, or whether it has a fluorescence microscope, or it has a STEM microscope, or it has some other type of microscope, you can probably adjust what type of tools the virtual lab is going to have. That is definitely going to be possible, but I don't think you can actually regulate, if it's a software, if it's a proprietary software, what type of different simulations they are allowed.
Okay. Moving on. Okay. How Western, Anbarson asks, how Western is AI? Is it biased by the source of training data in terms of geography, race, and so on?
Absolutely.
Great question.
Very biased for Western by the West in every way possible. Most of the other languages in the world are not even represented now, and are going to take a very long to be represented, because the data does not exist in the internet to the same extent. All kinds of racial profiling issues with generative adversarial networks, which are basically face recognition networks or image recognition networks using more complex algorithms, have come up because they have misidentified even people from African origin in the US, who are a fairly huge population. So imagine using some kind of a software that does that in India, where the entire the craniofacial morphology, I used to work on that, is entirely different because the bone structure is different and everything. So the bias are immense, and because of the racial bias that already exists in the internet. This is propagated and needs and it's been worked on, but I don't think it can ever be absolutely uprooted, because everything that already exists in the internet is not going to be taken down, right? So it is going to continue to exist. So it has to be changed in the models. And like I said previously, most of the networks and how they work and how the parameters are working is a black box. So it's just iterative learning, and I don't think the biases can ever be uprooted.
Good point. So we'll go to the next question then. Ritu Roy Chaudhary asks, I do a lot of writing and use ChatGPT as an editor, like Grammarly, only for grammar. Now, if my prompts are used by a future language model, could my own writing be flagged as AI generated in the future?
I don't think so. It's unlikely. If especially, I mean, it depends on where it is being flagged. I mean, if somebody else is using it, or if you are using it yourself and somebody has tagged it as an AI, of course you can fight it, but it's very unlikely that it will be tagged as AI as long as it is human, written by you or a human. Because they are definite so AI does recognize, even GPT, and I'm sure BERT recognizes the writing styles of different writers all the time. So they know the writing styles of J.K. Rowling. They know the writing style of Thomas Hardy. So they know the identifiers for those writing styles. So once you are a writer and you have written several things, they will know your writing style. And there might be a bug or something which you can't help. But I don't think in any other way it can be tagged as an AI. No, I don't think so.
Okay, next question. So Jyotira has quickly asked, are ChatGPT's responses based only on information that was available on the internet till 2022? I guess that's right.
For right now.
For
GPT
right now, okay.
3.5 and 4, but it's going to change very soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless there's a web there is also a web embedded ChatGPT, which Chrome is allowing, in which case all the knowledge is current. How it is using that knowledge is not that well understood or known, but it's still it has the access to use, and it's also paid to use newer data.
All right. Okay, we have 5 more minutes. We'll take a couple more questions. Manohar GM asks, my concern is in the field of bioinformatics that I teach. Currently, we have a number of AI tools that do all sorts of fantastic, highly advanced prediction, like protein structure predictions, etc. Though we understand in a broader perspective how they are working, it is still a black box. So I'm feeling that the older algorithms that which we were teaching are becoming obsolete, but are essential to understand bioinformatics conceptually. Am I justified in thinking so?
I definitely agree with you. Conceptually, the algorithms that will tell the students that this is the expected, folding, depending on because of the amino acid sequence that you're looking at. This can only be an alpha fold, and this will form a disulfide bond. All those concepts should be taught in the older form. Now, the only problem is with drug discovery and the number of proteins that exist. The amount of predictions we need to be done by actual people is going it's being a bottleneck. So AI is going to overcome that bottleneck and come up with more types of drugs, more types of antibody related drugs, more types of more. But eventually some human has to sift through that and figure out, just like in the end it's crystallography. So you have to make a structure that is valid. It's just that the number of predictions will increase, and possibly the number of drugs that are predicted will also increase, because it's just faster.
So
But
experiments
concepts have to be
still...
taught for the students to actually be using these tools in a way that makes sense, so that they can root out the absolutely ridiculous predictions. Somebody has to do that also.
All right. I think Ishita, I think we'll stop the Q&A. May I request you to stop sharing so that we can get to see all the people here once again, and maybe take some snaps. I think we still have 138 participants here. We started with a lot more.
I just want to thank everybody for
away.
attending. And if anybody, I just want one small remark. Sorry about that. I want to thank everybody for attending. I did not expect so many of you to show up. Thank you so much for attending. And if any of you want to collaborate with me with the science fiction course that I'm trying to develop, which is like envisioning the impact of technology and scientific research on human society, please get in touch. I leave my email ID in the chat. And thank you so much for having me, Vijeta, and thank you all for attending. And I'm going to stop staring now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ishita. I think we all learned a lot about AI and its limitations, and also what to keep in mind while using it in the classrooms, right? So let me see if I can take some pictures here. Spotlight. And okay, we are in gallery view now, and I see lots of people still here. So we started with a few more, but I'm glad that we still have a lot of participants, and I hope you all enjoyed and took something from this meeting, which you can bring to your classrooms. We just hope that you will, once this meeting is done, sorry, can you not hear my voice clearly? I see a message saying that the voice is not clear. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So, yeah, I was just about to thank everybody for coming here and, having this highly interactive session. And after this meeting ends, I'll be very thankful if you can share your feedback with us. Arushi, may I request you to put the link to the feedback in the chat box? Yes, so the link is there. And if you can give us your feedback, it will help us immensely in bringing up better events for you in the future. On that note, I thank one and all for coming here today, and hope to see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.